So I'm going to go ahead and welcome everybody to the webinar. This is really exciting. I've been looking forward to this. I want to thank everybody for their patience. I think I sent out the invites about 3 weeks ago. I got a whole load of grief for that because I sent them out a while back. But really wanted to get it right, and there was a lot of technical challenges. This is the first time I've done something like this in terms of an end-to-end, webinar that I'm charging for and all the surround and stuff. So it was a little technically challenging. They tell you it's easy to do this online business stuff, and they're lying. Quick set of housekeeping notes. First thing is, you guys can email me questions or frankly anything to my email, townsendwardlaw@gmail.com. I will I'll keep this going, or keep my email open and be looking at it. Maybe a little bit of a lag, but that's okay. So comments. If somebody could at least email me now and tell me that they've got sound, that would be fantastic, and I would be able to rest easier that you can actually hear me. All the systems on my end look good. Include your name, please. Come on, Mick. Tell me what's going on here. I don't know. Anyway, put your name in the email. I'll try to answer them all. We're gonna have a formal question and answer at the end, but might not get to all the questions. I'm gonna try. I can just stay on as long as I want. Or as long as the questions hold up. Also, I can answer questions throughout the conversation as well, so that'll be fun. So just go ahead and put those in there. I wanted to be clear about one thing, and that is this is not a webinar about closing. I had a number of inquiries as people were signing up for this thing, and I thought I would at the very least address that here. We're going to be talking about prospecting. We're going to be talking about getting the first meeting. Cold calling, right, is the medium, using the phone. We'll talk a little bit about email and other things, but the purpose of this webinar is really arm you guys with the skill to get a meeting with somebody, right? If you had a line out your door of people waiting to talk to you, and all they do is open the door and they sit down and they they start talking to you, you can give your pitch, your presentation, your demo, what have you. Sales would be pretty good, but I'm of the belief that prospecting, the very, very top of the funnel, is 80% of the work, right? Getting somebody to actually listen to what you're saying. And we're going to dig into that today, and that really is the topic. We're not going to be talking about, good, thanks. I got a text from somebody saying you can hear me, so that makes me feel better. If you can't, I don't know what to say. I'm not going to be able to debug everybody individually. Good news is there will be a recording after this. You can also watch this on your iPhone. You can watch it on your iPad. There's a number of ways to do this. So if you're having trouble with your computer, whip out your phone and use the same link. As it says there, everybody will get a copy of the recording. There will be bonuses. As I went through this, this content, there were about 8 things I can't really remember that really I thought would add value in terms of tools that I had, scripts, or things that I've done for their clients that I wanted to share. So you will get those as part of the follow-up email, and they should be able to help you. And I do want to give you a fair warning. I'm selling something at the end, right? So it's not a big thing. There is a follow-on masterclass that I'm going to be offering around this topic. I think you'll get plenty of value out of this webinar. Anybody who doesn't, send me an email. I'll give you $20 back if you don't get at least $100 worth of value. But there is an opportunity at the end of this that I'll pitch you on to do something else and kind of take another little step in the journey. And I'll warn you. I'll have a big disclaimer saying, "Hey guys, I'm going to sell for a couple minutes. So if you need to go to the bathroom or just ignore me, that's fine as well." Not seeing any emails coming. Okay, good. We can hear you. We can hear you. I love you all. Mwah. Thanks so much. I'm going to keep rocking and rolling. That makes me feel a lot better. I can relax now. Lots of good folks. Mike Israel, good to see you on here. Howard, which one? I don't know what that is. Great. She can hear me. Andy, fantastic. Good. Lots of good peeps on here now. So hopefully you read the objectives of the email. I don't need to read these to you, but this is really what we're going to go after today. I'm going to show you my blueprint, right? This is how I do it, and it's kind of fun, right? Because of all the things that I do in terms of sales technique and teaching people stuff. To me, cold calling is kind of the most fun because it's tangible. It's it's very, very rewarding, right? The ability to move from I don't have anybody to sell to I got a meeting with so-and-so is where it all begins. So to me, it's the most fundamental skill. It's the most powerful skill. Nothing makes me happier than, other than getting a text from John Davis, nothing makes me happier than knowing that somebody who, a day or a week ago was terrified to pick up the phone can literally pick up the phone and get a meeting with anybody they want to. So that's pretty cool. Sorry if I seem distracted. I got a couple little screens going on here and just making sure I'm tracking everything. So all good. All right. Hopefully you read those. Let's start out with a definition of prospecting. Oh, I forgot to say, I think this could be about an hour. Might go longer. If you have to get up and go to the bathroom, well, I won't know, so don't worry about it. But like I said, the recording will be sent out. Prospecting. I'm not going to go through my whole sales model and all the stages, but I really think about selling as comprised of 4 distinct phases: prospecting, qualification, discovery, and then selling, right? So for me, selling is really what happens at the end after you do everything else. Prospecting is really, really simple in the definition, and actually in the techniques. It's the most work, as I said. But for me, prospecting is simply using all the available resources, phone, voicemail, email, networking events, to transition or to move from an interruption, right? Hey, have I caught you at a bad time or a good time, or this is Townsend, to a scheduled interaction, right? And by the way, prospecting applies for both cold calling, I've never talked to this person, as well as for what I would call warm calling, right? Or even calling friends. The process and the stuff that I show you today is no different if I'm calling somebody I've done business with in the past than if I'm calling a cold prospect, right? My goal is always to move from an interruption to a plan for interaction. And that's really, that's really what it's about. You can do a little bit of qualification in the prospecting phase, and we'll talk about at the end how it's good to qualify after you've set a meeting. But qualification is a separate phase. The hard part, as anybody who's ever done this before, is of course getting somebody to pick up the phone, right? And we'll talk about metrics and things like that. The second hardest part is getting past the first 15 seconds, really, right? What the prospect is doing, we'll talk about it in more detail, but what the prospect is doing when they answer the phone is trying to decide, am I talking to somebody that I'm supposed to be talking to? And if you hit any what I call the vendor wire trigger, sort of like a landmine, you blow up the call, and that's when you get rejected. Oh, talk to somebody else. I don't want to talk, click, what have you. So this is what we're going to really dig into today is how do we nail this conversion from interruption to plan for conversation. Let's talk about interruptive communication. And again, a reminder for folks joining us, you can email your questions to the address at the bottom. I got something from somebody saying the screen is frozen. Obviously they can't hear me if I do that. If anybody else is having that problem, somebody please let me know and I'll do something. I wonder if I can actually just reply to Bill really quick. Let's see here. We'll give it a shot just because I don't want people to be left out. Bill, ... try restarting the application or joining from your iPhone. There we go. Sorry, I feel bad. I don't want people to, I don't want to be doing tech support the whole time, but I don't want people to be suffering either. Anyway, one of the things that I hear when I talk about my approach to prospecting is, I don't like that approach, or I don't think that approach would work, or I wouldn't respond to that approach. The funny thing is, as human beings, we're actually very, very unaware. We are poor at awareness of how we really react to things. We think we know what triggers and what doesn't trigger us. That's not the case, right? I've studied communication, right? I've studied interruptive communication, which is the art of cold calling for, 10, 15, maybe longer years. And it's not what people think, right? It's very different than scheduled communication, right? Think about walking up to somebody in a supermarket who's familiar, who you know them, maybe a friend from work. Imagine you walk up and just start talking to them. Their brain is completely adjusting to the context, to who you are, what they're doing, trying to put everything in its place. They're not really hearing you in the same way as if you were meeting in their office, if you're on their calendar, etc. So all this really is about how do we deal with this interruptive communication medium, which is very, very, very different. So it's not the same as scheduled communication. Everything you're going to learn today is helping you master a kind of communication that nobody ever thinks about, that nobody ever really studies. So happy to field questions and concerns and why does this work or why not, but understand this has been really, really thought about. By way of example, in Denver here, and if you guys are from Denver, we have the thing called the 16th Street Mall. It's kind of a quasi-nasty little pedestrian mall in downtown Denver. It used to be really kind of hip and cool. You walk up and down there, there's restaurants and bums and all sorts of stuff. But as you walk from one end of the walking mall to the other, and I don't know, it's probably 20 blocks or something. And say you're meeting your friend for lunch, right? what happens as you go block to block, right? Every 50 yards, what have you, you're presented with somebody trying to interact with you, right? Help the homeless. Do you have a minute to save the children? Can you spare $1? How do you feel about the environment, etc.? You're not having conversations. You're not interacting with these people. It's not a real conversation because you're going to lunch, right? You want to get someplace. The way you're behaving is more a function of reflex, right? You're not stopping at every, vendor or busker or whatever the heck it is, and rationally listening to their pitch, what they're telling you, fitting it with your value system, evaluating whether or not it makes sense, and okay, yeah, let's keep talking. No, it's yeah, thanks. Well, I use the phone; it's a sort of habit, but it's no thanks. I gave at the office. Not interested. I can ignore you. I can put it on my phone. Whatever. So that's what we got to realize is when we're dealing with folks in an interruptive medium, they're not really paying attention, right? It's not about interest and excitement. We've been taught for years that you got to have your unique value proposition that wows them and gets their attention, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't work because they're not listening. They can't hear you. Their rational mind is not interacting with you, right? The other thing to think about in interruptive conversation is what is the goal that the other person has? As soon as they answer the phone, the first thing they do is regret it, right? Oh gosh, it could be my mom. It's probably a vendor. Why did I even pick up the phone? It's amazing to me, frankly, that people still pick up the phone at all, but they do, which is why we use it. So ask yourself what that person's goal is the second they pick up the phone. Hopefully you're answering, they want to get off the phone. If our interest is to keep them on the phone and get a conversation going, we are at opposition, right? We're not aligned with them. What if our interest, what if our motivation, what if our goal was to get off the phone? Now our interests are aligned. So a lot of this methodology really plays on the psychology of aligning yourself to what the prospect wants, where they're at, and understanding, the concept of interruptive communication. Lastly, and I sort of referenced this on the previous slide, we tend to assume that the other person is trying to understand whether or not our product is something they need, whether or not we're credible, whether we're trustworthy, all these really, rich and let's call them detailed aspects. In my studying this, in my doing this for a long, long time, what I've learned, and also this is by interviewing and doing first-person interviews and watching people, who take a lot of cold calls, who get a lot of cold calls. The only thing the person on the other end of the phone is trying to understand is, am I supposed to be in this conversation, right? It's really a binary decision. Can I offload this to somebody else? Should I offload it? Am I supposed to be talking to this person, right? Imagine yourself at a party. And I love using physical world examples when I'm talking about the business world. Even a networking event or a friendly party, when we're interacting with someone, yeah, we're at the same party and we're talking. As soon as they start telling their stories or their hobbies or what have you, we're making a determination. Not are they interesting, not are they cool, not are they trustworthy. Is this even a conversation that I should be standing in? If I walk to a group of folks, I use an outlandish example. They're telling a bunch of racist jokes. I'm not a big racist. Haven't been for years. That's a joke. I would know very quickly that I'm not supposed to be in this conversation. This is not for me, and I'd walk away. The same exact thing is happening when you pick up the phone and you're dialing a prospect. They're listening. There's all sorts of stuff going on. They're hearing about every third or fourth or fifth word, right? They're not really paying attention, but their brain is sitting there saying, am I supposed to be talking to this person? And if we say anything or do anything or make any sudden movements that flips that little switch in their brain that says, oh, this is a vendor I'm talking to. Boom, you're gone. You've tripped the vendor wire. Reminder, email questions to townsendwardlaw@gmail.com. Okay, once again, I'll say this one more time. The only objective of prospecting, the only intention of this entire process is to transition from an interruption to a planned for scheduled interaction. If I can get you into a scheduled meeting, magic can happen. Great. Moving on. As a foundation for this work, well, I guess I'll back up. I'm guessing most of you on this webinar have downloaded and read and maybe even digested my cold call playbook thingy from the website, right? I think it's been downloaded 5,000 or 6,000 times, which is pretty cool. The one problem and the one thing that I guess I kind of feel bad about is that people download and I get lots of emails and messages and things like that. The methodology and everything I show you today doesn't work if you can't answer the question on the screen in the right way. And we're going to talk about that, right? Because it's really, really important. The most important question you can answer, as a salesperson, frankly, is what do you do, right? And somewhere in the conversation, no matter how good you are, what have you, you're trying to get a meeting, they're going to say, so what do you guys do, right? And depending on how you answer that question, you will either identify yourself as a vendor, get flagged and ejected from the system, or you will generate some curiosity. You will create some context for a conversation that they want to have. So how you answer this question actually is the most important thing in the entire process. So not surprisingly, we're going to spend a little time on that. There are four ways to answer the question. What do you do? And I'd like you to take a minute and think about how do you answer it on a cold call, and a networking event, et cetera, et cetera. There's the functional, the stuff you do. If I'm a carpenter, I saw the wood, I hammer the nails. That's what I do. That's the stuff I do. If I'm Townsend, which I am, I train people in sales process. I customize and implement, CRM like Salesforce.com. I build sales process. Whatever. That's the stuff. The problem with answering with the stuff you do is it limits you to the narrow band of conversations that exist when the person you're talking to, A, understands what you're talking about, B, needs it, wants to, consume it, and C, needs it right now. So there's a timing issue. So if I talk about the stuff I do, that's a problem, right? I do get hits, as I define them, right? Somebody says, oh, that sounds great, but only when on the other end they say, yeah, we're looking for that right now, right? Talking about myself, answering the question, what do you do in terms of the stuff I do, only is successful if they need it right now. Otherwise, that sounds great, totally need it, call later. The beneficial pitch, which is what we've been taught to do with the value proposition and stuff like that. I'm going to send a quick note to Mick. He's having issues today. Let's try this. I can't even do it. Never mind. Oh, there we go. Try resetting the app or log in from your iPhone. Love speech to text. Okay, beneficial, which is the unique value proposition. We can generate more revenue, grow your business, blah, 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 that kind of stuff, right? The conceptual, and I won't belabor this too much. The conceptual is really related to the concept of outrageous claims. We're going to dramatically change the way that your company, processes, blah, 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 this, that, and the other thing. Now we're back in. Great, good. Conceptual is not really good because it's presumptuous, as well as the beneficial, right? The conceptual, A, flags you as a vendor. B, to my mind, comes across as presumptuous. I know your business well enough, and I know your business better than you, so I'm gonna tell you how I can help you. It may be true, and you may have that benefit in your back pocket. Unfortunately, from the other side of the desk, from the listening side, nobody believes it. And nobody wants to be told, hey, I can change your entire world. This brings us to the referential descriptions. This is the really important part, and you'll notice there's a bonus you'll get after this, basically a sample customized referential value proposition. So I'll send that to you guys. The referential answer, the referential value proposition, as I like to call it, shares with your prospect how you have served others like them. So I'll go slow here. When somebody says to me, Townsend, what do you do? Right? I could say, the stuff I said before. I could say I double your revenue. I could say I'll change the nature of your sales organization and empower your people, blah, blah, blah. What I say is this. I would say, thanks for asking. I work with founders, CEOs, owners of small companies. And for me, that typically means $1 to $10 million. And I work with owners who are frustrated by a couple of things. And typically what they share with me is that they have a CRM in place, yet it doesn't seem to be giving them any more value or any more knowledge or insight into what the people are doing all day. They've been successful. They've generated sales, but they have no idea how to replicate those sales and grow their business, and that's frustrating to them. And frankly, the other thing that really frustrates the guys that I talk to and the women that I talk to is the fact that their salespeople are dependent on inbound leads and referrals. They don't seem to be able to pick up the phone. They don't seem to be able to generate new top of the funnel activity, and that's frustrating to them. Do any of those resonate with you? That's exactly how I would say that, right? So think about what just happened. You asked a question, or I pretend you asked a question, and the question was, what do I do? And I answered you, right? You got a sense of what I do, but I answered it in a way that is going to elicit a couple of very specific reactions from you. One reaction is going to be the blank stare. I have no idea what you're talking about. That's a good thing. I just qualified you out. If I say that, set of 1 to 10 mil, blah, 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 blah. If I say that set of stuff and you look at me with a blank stare, guess we don't need to talk that much further, right? Second option, you could say, wow, that sounds really interesting. In fact, all of those things are on my plate right now. Tell me more. How do you do that? That'd be kind of cool. A third might be, well, I don't have those challenges, but I know somebody who does. So either way, of the 3 possible responses, 2 are positive, right? That's kind of a good thing. And all 2 of the positive ones invite a conversation. It's going to be hard to say, I don't need any of that because I didn't pitch you on what I do, right? If those things are frustrations of yours, or you know somebody who is frustrated by that, your next question is going to be, wow, how do you do that? Tell me more, right? And that's a good thing. All right, we're going to keep going. When we talk about selling, almost inevitably, folks come back to the phrase, the point, the opinion. Sales about relationships. Oh, I understand this cold calling stuff, but really, Townsend, sales is about relationships. And I agree, right? I really do agree. My response back is typically, great, define a relationship for me. Tell me what a relationship is. And that's typically when I get the blank stare, right? Because, well, it's when you, and then ... Well, I think about relationships and the science of relationships. And my good friend Peter Sveneby is on the line here someplace, and I think he put a comment up. But he and I think the same way, and it could be me quoting him or him quoting me or somebody developed together. But relationships are simply a function of interactions over time, the interactions we have, multiplied by a positive or negative, right? So you can create any kind of relationship simply by the interactions you have over time. Think about dating, right? Dating is simply a function of relationships that start with a first date, potentially end someplace in marriage, and then maybe beyond that in something that undoes marriage. But if we just think about from the first date to marriage, let's use that, there are a series of progressive and increasingly intimate interactions that we all sort of get intuitively, right? I know what a first date looks like. I know what a dinner date, maybe a long date. I know what a weekend away. I know what a vacation. I know what the other stuff in relationships. The problem in relationships happens when we do things out of order, right? When we get out in front of the headlights, right? You're on a first date, maybe even a speed date, and you're talking about getting married, right? That's going to violate sort of the social norms reality of relationships. Enough about relationships in the personal sense. I wanted to share for just a second how I look at relationships in the sales process. I'm not going to go into this, but the idea is you can define and map out a series of conversations, both in terms of duration, right, and in terms of the intimacy of the conversation that you have. So this is really important. It'll be more important in a minute. But ultimately, everything starts with the cold call over here, and that's why I put this up there, and getting the next interaction, the next interaction, the next interaction, et cetera, et cetera. So real high level on relationships. I'll keep going. Prospecting, when we talk about effective prospecting, right, I think of a concept that I refer to obviously as pursuit protocol. If I'm going to pursue a prospect, a lot of alliteration going on there, I need to have some ground rules for myself, right? I need to think about how often I'm going to call them, when I'm going to call them, how many times a day, how many total dials, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll get into a little bit of best practices today, but the concept of multi-threading is simply meaning talk to more than one person, right? If I'm going to target an enterprise account or even a large company, I'm going to target a minimum of 3 people. I don't believe in, I got this guy's business card at the trade show, therefore I'm going to call him or her and hope that they talk to me. At a minimum, I'm going to go to LinkedIn, friend that person or link or whatever they call it, find 2 or 3 of their peers who I want to talk to, maybe the CEO, maybe the VP of sales, and call them all. In fact, I might call the person I met last. So multi-threading is critical early in the process. Unfortunately, as salespeople, we tend to lock into one person, get towards the end of the deal, and then they tell us, oh, by the way, there's other people involved, and we don't know who they are. That's not good. Persistence criteria, how many attempts will you make? Again, we'll talk about some of this stuff at the end, but my general rule is if you're not willing to call somebody 10 times, don't call them once. Don't make a single call. Don't even bother, right? Because fundamentally, nobody's going to answer on the first ring. Not nobody. Very, very rarely would that happen. And it's not their job to call you back. So you need to think early on about how will you persist. And I'll show you an example of a persistence or a pursuit protocol map in a second here. And then fundamentally, or I said lastly, multi-channel, right? In this age of what everybody's now calling social selling, which gives me a headache actually to even hear that term because we've been doing this for years. The simple concept is we have multiple angles to come at folks, right? It kind of drives me crazy that I get 3, 4, 5, 6 LinkedIn messages from people I don't know, typically asking for lead generation services, or trying to pitch me on those. None of them bother to send me a real email, despite the fact that my email is in my profile. My phone number, my cell number is in my profile. Any one of these vendors could pick up the phone and call me. None do. They're lazy. So if you're not multi-threading, if you don't have a significant persistence criteria set, and you're not thinking about prospecting as multi-channel, a multi-channel activity, you're lazy. Stop doing it. Just put in a little effort. Here's an example of a pursuit map, right? This isn't a perfect one. This is just an example of how you might set up an intention for how I'm going to go after a prospect. And frankly, this is what it might take, right? It might take multiple marketing drip emails, or, if you got something like that going on, you could be sending emails. There's multiple calls, right? Voicemails, there's LinkedIn connections. All of this could be used to get a meeting. But the point here is it's important that you think through, as part of your prospecting strategy, what am I going to do? How am I going to go after these folks? Am I just going to call 5 times? Am I going to call 10 times? Am I going to call 5 times and send 3 emails? It doesn't matter what you choose. Just pick a plan and stick to it. The reason is, if I know that going into a campaign, so to speak, I'm gonna make 8 attempts. I'm gonna send an email after the 3rd call and after the 6th call. I'm gonna leave a voicemail on the first and on the last, and I'm gonna connect with them on LinkedIn, or try to after 2 attempts. If you state that as your intention and you stick with it for all of them, at the end of the campaign, you'll be able to look back and say, how does that work? And then for the next campaign, you'll be able to say, well, wonder if I change this one element, if it makes it better or worse. That's how you learn, right? People always say, well, how do you know so much about cold calling and prospecting? Well, I've done it for a long time. I've done a lot of it, and I've done it with very strict intention on the front end. What do I intend to do? Manage the execution and measure the results, and constantly gone back and said, what would make it better? So, hope that makes sense for you. All right, I hope everybody is doing well. I didn't see any emails, haven't seen emails in a little bit, so that's probably good. One thing that's really important to talk about in terms of, cold calling, prospecting, is how you manage your time. I will tell you, this is going to be funny, the single greatest cause of ineffective prospecting is not picking up the phone. Sounds obvious, doesn't it, right? I will sit down and train a team, put a plan in place, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We launch on Monday. We meet again on Friday. How'd it go? Well, we didn't set any appointments. Gosh, what happened? Well, when you really dig into it, and by the way, the people I'm training typically want to talk about, the technique and this or that, and eventually I'll say, so how many calls do we make? Well, mumble, mumble, mumble. That means not that many. That means like 5. Okay, why didn't we make any calls? Well, things got in the way. What things? Like life, right? Sometimes we're distracted. Sometimes we get distracted. Sometimes we don't want to do it. So that makes sense to me. As you wind this back, as I peel back or dig for the root cause, the real challenge is it was never in their calendar, right? Cold calling was set up as an activity that they would do when they had time, right? We all know how well that works out when we want to go to the gym. Oh, I'll go to the gym when I have some time. Gosh, it's 9 o'clock and I've had a bottle of wine again. Funny how that worked. So one of the critical skills to implement in this whole process is blocking out your time. Cold calling is like working out. Cold calling is like, having dinner with your folks. If you don't put it on the calendar, it ain't going to get done by accident. So I'm going to show you this in a minute, and you guys will actually get 3 separate time blocking worksheets. But you can create a schedule that you can then put in your calendar. But I want to be clear. If you look at my calendar or somebody that I'm working with, and you go to next week, they will have, for example, very specific blocks in their calendar for for when they're going to cold call, when they're going to do research, and even when they're going to schedule their first meeting. That's another thing, because obviously we're talking about moving from an interaction to a plan for, an interruption to a plan for an interaction. The process of setting the meeting itself is never what time works for you. It's moving them to a specific block we've allocated. So this will make more sense when I show you, which I'm going to do right now. So this is an example of a calendar, an ideal calendar, an intended calendar for a 100% pure cold call prospector rep, right? So this is what we would put in their calendar and help them manage their time, right? So if you look at this, start at 8:30, get some prep, right? Logging in, having your coffee, making sure you got everything there. Not research, right? Not doing the actual research or trying to find numbers. This is just making sure everything's all organized. Ideally, you would have a couple of scheduled calls that were the result of your work last week, right? So if it was, the week prior, and I had somebody on the hook, I wouldn't say, hey, I want to get a meeting with you. What time works? I would say, hey, I want to get a meeting with you. I have an opening Thursday morning at 9. I can also do Tuesday at 1, right? So I'm driving people to specific slots. And we'll talk about that in the script. But the idea is you can set this up however you want. I like this because it's kind of nice to start the day with some scheduled calls versus pounding the phone. Some people like to pound the phone earlier and get out of the way. Doesn't matter, right? So I do a meeting at 9 that's been scheduled. I do a meeting at 9:30 that's scheduled. And then I do my outbound. Then I go to my queue and I start making my dials, and I do it for an hour. I will tell you that about the longest amount of time that somebody can sit and really make calls effectively and efficiently is about an hour and a half. People who block 4 hours for cold calling and prospecting are lying to themselves, because that's not how it works. All right. Nobody makes calls for 4 hours. What they do is they make a call, they check the internet, they go to LinkedIn, they do some research, and they make another call 10 minutes later. That's not efficient. I like to sit down 45 minutes, bang out 20, 30 calls, pick up an appointment or two, move on with life, right? That's really an ideal kind of schedule. Go have lunch, outbound, research and prep. One of the things you need to do in prospecting is, meet up people on LinkedIn, do some research on the web. You don't do that in line with the calling. It's very, very inefficient. You do that as a separate activity, right? With this schedule, you can easily make, and by the way, there's 3 hours of calls, right? 3 hours of outbound. With this schedule, I guarantee you can make 60 to 80 outbound dials manually. And I'm not even talking about using something like Connect and Sell. You have something like Connect and Sell. If you guys don't know what it is, go check it out. Way easier, right? You can basically put two-hour blocks of outbound or what have you and crush it. But with this schedule, manual dialing, you can do 60 to 80 calls without breaking a sweat and without, frankly, wanting to blow your brains out at the end of the day. Like I said, you will get 3 of these in your email box. There's one for a pure cold call. There's one for what I call an end-to-end salesperson, and then there's a blank one. All right, moving along. I'm going to take a sip of water from a Batman glass. Once again, if you guys would like, you can email me questions at my email address, townsendwardlaw@gmail.com, and I'll be answering them. Hopefully you're getting a lot out of this. Hopefully it's making sense. Hopefully not too confusing. So in this part of the program, we're going to talk about the script, right? Hopefully you guys have seen it, you've read it. I call it a cold call flow script, sort of in parentheses, right? It's not really a script, but it is kind of script. First question people always say is, why do I need a script? Why do I even need that thing? What I will tell you is that cold calling is boring. Cold calling is monotonous. Prospecting is the least stimulating, most aggravating part of the entire sales process. It's also the thing that's the easiest to train people on, with the exception about 5 or 10% of it where you have to be really, really good. My belief is our brain power should be reserved for the parts of any specific activity that actually require it, right? If I can almost put myself on autopilot following a script, I've got full access to all of my brain power in the moment that I need it, right? That 5 or 10% of the conversation where I really have to be listening, where I really have to be connecting with that prospect. So that's one of the reasons you need a script. The other one is, I'll be honest with you, and we'll talk about this in a minute, this thing works, right? The funniest thing to me is watching people, when I'm training, what have you, the first thing they do is they ignore the script and they just kind of make their own stuff up. Doesn't typically work as well because they think they're taking pieces and parts. And then we finally say, hey, well, why aren't you using the script the way it's supposed to be? Well, I don't want to sound like I'm reading it. Just read it, right? Who cares if you sound like you're reading it? Do that for a week and then you have it memorized and you won't sound like you're reading it anymore. So they move from refusing to use the script to reading it to sounding really good with it, and they're crushing it. About a month later, like clockwork, their results start to go down. Why? They're moving off the script again. They're doing ad hoc stuff. They're all over the place, right? It's sort of funny. Like, hey, it works. Why would I stop using it? Well, I'm bored with it. Yeah, me too. But if it works, we want to get meetings. What about my personality? What about my style? Yeah, that's fine. You can insert, voice inflections and spaces, etc. And by the way, there's plenty of opportunity in the process to express your style, to express your individuality. It just is in certain areas. The vast majority of this stuff really should be on autopilot, right? And this is my I don't know if it's my plug or not, but this script, what I have out there, I'm not joking when I say millions, multi-million outbound calls, right? When I was running my company, some of you might remember in Denver, we had, roughly 80 people on the phones at all times, hundreds of different clients. We were doing 750,000 outbound phone calls a year, right? For several years. Hundreds of companies have used this. This is not like I made this up one day while I'm sitting there, just kind of thinking my happy thoughts. Every little space, comma, inflection has been scrutinized and thought about in terms of its effect on getting the meetings, right? It's all about the effectiveness of getting meetings. It's not to sound cool. It's not to, prove that I've got a better script. It's to help people that use it get better meetings, get more meetings. If you go to the YouTube channel and you actually watch the video where I do the little whiteboard diagram, which probably would be useful after this, there's lots of comments, right? And all these people have comments about, well, I don't like doing this way, or this is the wrong approach. And I'm generally pretty nice and I try to answer, but what I really want to say is, yeah, that's an opinion you have. This is based on data, right? Everything on here was done in a really controlled environment and tested and validated and changed and iterated to make it better. So I love when people say, one of the things I'm famous for is I will always ask, have I caught you at a bad time? I will tell you, number one, that the question, have I caught you at a bad time, works 60% better than have I caught you at a good time. Why? I don't know. I'm not a philosopher or a psychologist. I'm a scientist, right? I care about data. I will tell you it works better. People will say, I like have I caught you at a good time. People will say, I don't like asking that. The answer is, who cares what you like? If you want to have more meetings, this approach works. So I'm going to get into it, but I thought I'd give you a little bit of framing on that. So we're going to walk through it, just a couple of the main parts. And then we'll get into objections and other stuff like that. All right, I'm just checking in with stuff like that. So I'm going to try to read it, and I'll play both parts. I don't know if I can do both voices, but you guys have seen this stuff, right? So the prospect answers, and, hey, this is Bob. State your name. This is Townsend. Am I speaking with Bob Johnson? Right? They're going to say, yes. Who's this? What's it about? Right? They always say that. Well, hi, Bob. My name's Townsend. I'm with Progressive Global Networks. I'm actually using this. This is a real client that I did. They, what do? They did some wacky foreclosure prevention stuff. And actually, I like this example because they're in a really tough business. They're trying to get people to meet with them about a really sensitive topic, refinancing or buying out their home or saving their home or something. So, yeah, hey, Bob, this is Townsend with Progressive Global Networks. Have I caught you at a bad time? Yeah, but what's this about, right? So let's take a stop right there. Have I caught you at a bad time? I'm going to get guaranteed one of three answers. No, it's fine. What do you want, right? Yes, it's a bad time, but what do you want? Or yes, it's a bad time, thanks so much, right? Basically kind of a soft hang up, or sometimes a hard hang up. What I will tell you is when you get the, either the first two, obviously keep going. When you get the third one and they say, yeah, it's a bad time, your answer should be, okay, I'll try to catch you again, when you're not quite so busy. Don't hang up the phone. About 50% of the time, even when they say, yes, it's a bad time, and you say, no, or you say, great, I'll get off the phone then, they still come back and say, well, what's this about? And you're back on track, right? Sort of funny that way. So I don't know what that means, but let's call it 75, 80% of the time, maybe even 90%, you're going to get to who is this, what is this about, or some variant of that, right? You're going to get through this part of it. Now, one of the important things here, and I'll try to go slow on this, is I want you to look at the colors and what just happened. I talk, they talk, I talk, they talk, right? So they talk, I talk, they talk, I talk, they talk. By the time I get to the point where I'm going to answer the question, who are you, what do you do, or when they ask it, we've gone back and forth 3 times, right? Take the concept that I shared about relationships, a function of interactions over time, compress it down to this thing called a cold call, and the more back and forth that we have, I guess I should do it this way because depth is better, the more of a mini relationship we're building, right? We're not building a relationship. It's a cold call. Let's not kid ourselves. But the more back and forth I have, the better. Contrast this with your typical approach. Prospect answers, I talk for 45 seconds to a minute. Blah, 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 blah. All this talking, they're not even hearing you. Dirty little secret about phone-based communication. When somebody picks up the phone and says hello, their brain is not switched on. They're not actually listening to you for 12 to 15 seconds. You know how I know this? My mom calls me once a week. That's not true. We actually call multiple times during the week. But anybody who talks to their folks knows this. Oh, hi, Mom. Talking. I'm task switching the food. I got to turn that down. Not paying attention. This is a really important exercise just to pass the ball back and forth a couple times. Now let's keep going. Yeah, who's this? What's it about? Hey, thanks for asking. Once again, my name's Townsend. I'm an associate with Progressive Global Networks. So I've said my name 3 times. They might actually have heard it. The purpose of my call is I'm looking to schedule 10 to 15 minutes with you sometime next week to formally introduce myself and my company. How's Thursday at 1 o'clock? Now, a couple important things. First is you always end your turn with a question, right? I love when people call me and they say blah, 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 and then they stop talking. And I, just for fun, will sit there and not say anything. And they'll say, are you there? I'm like, yes, you were talking. And then you stop talking. Right? You didn't ask me a question. You didn't hand the ball over to me. So always end with a question, number 1. Number 2, I didn't answer the question in any way. Right? And I went right for something that A, I want, right? I'm trying to get a meeting. B, is something they don't want to give me. In this moment, right when I say, would you have 10 minutes? Oh, the other thing is I'm asking for something specific. I'm not saying, would you have time next week? I'm going right to, how about 1 o'clock, right? A couple of interesting things happen. I will tell you that more often than you think, 10, 15, 20%, the person says, well, I don't know about Thursday, but maybe Friday, right? First time that happens to you, you're kind of, your jaw is going to drop and say, wow, that was kind of cool. It's amazing. I asked for something, I get it. Doesn't always happen, but it happens once in a while. What happens most often is I can literally hear the wheels of their brain grinding to a halt, right? I have just, I don't know what the word is, perpetrated what's called as an interrupt, a pattern interrupt, right? I have done the last thing that they expect to happen on a cold call, which is ask for an appointment, didn't tell you who I am, didn't tell you the value, didn't pitch you, none of that stuff. I have their attention. Let's keep going. Peter Sveneby has a comment. The back and forth volleys, as he called them, are hugely important. Salesperson objective, your prospect talking, even if negative, more than you. Good point, Peter. Absolutely. All right. So now their brain is going, stop to a halt, right? I've had all sorts of responses. I've had, do I know you? Have we met? I've had, who the hell is this, right? I mean, that doesn't really matter. On some level, you're going to get the same response. I'm sorry, what is this about? Who are you? What I want you to do is in that moment right here, don't take anything that they say, the words or the tone or the volume, personally, right? They're asking you an important question. Tell me what you do. Tell me who you are, right? They're playing into our hand. One of the things that hopefully you're noticing about this call flow script is there are a limited number of ways to walk through this. Part of the problem in traditional prospecting is it's this wide open playing field. Anything can happen. We don't want that. We want to be able to manage an increasingly narrower set of options to our advantage. And we want to have a prepared response to each of those options so we're not making it up. That gives us the advantage. That gives us the edge. So whether they say, who the hell is this? Why would I give you a meeting? Or, gosh, I'm sorry, do we know each other? You follow the same process. Take a deep breath and say, my name is Townsend, and I'm associate with Progressive Global Networks. Have you heard of Progressive Global? I know they haven't heard of it. I get another volley. I get another pass back. That's what I'm doing. I'm also aligning with a principle that I hold near and dear in selling, and that is never give information unless it's asked for. Never handle an objection that isn't presented, right? Never try to overcome one that you don't know what it is. But most importantly, don't tell people stuff that they haven't asked to hear. When I give you a value proposition, start telling you what I am and who I do and how great I am, and you've never asked me, that's rude. If I can get you to say, Townsend, I'm sorry, I don't know what you do. Well, that's not a please will you tell me, but you're asking, and that means your brain is receptive to the words that are going to come out of my mouth. Mouse, house, whatever, I can't even think. Try not to pitch without permission. That's the way I think about it. So in this moment, what I am doing is I am getting you to ask me to answer the question that I want you to ask me, right? I'm trying to keep the conversation going. Have you heard of Progressive Global? No, I haven't. Sometimes they say, what do you do? Sometimes they say, no, I have not. It's the same thing. You're saying, tell me. Well, great. Thanks for asking, Bob. Progressive Global is based in Valley Stream, New York. We serve homeowners wrestling with challenges associated with foreclosure. Oftentimes my clients tell me they're frustrated with the confusing array of solutions being presented to them. Frankly, they tell me they get 3 or 4 of these calls a day from people like me claiming they can help, but aren't really sure who to believe or who they can trust, right? That is the referential value proposition we talked about. Now the next step, because I got to pass the ball back, right? I've done enough talking. I want to get off. I want to hand it back to you, is I'm going to ask a clarifying or a qualifying question. You need to have these prepared. You need to have your go-to questions that are going to be specific for you. But in this guy's case, it was, just to confirm, you're still the primary homeowner at your address, right? This question, I would say, this clarifying question, this next volley, is ideal if you know they know the answer and you know the answer, right? It's not the time to ask them, a complex question like, so what would you say your greatest challenge in IT is? That's silly. You're not going to say, what was your total spend? Ask them, it's a softball question, right? Hey, Bob, just to confirm, you guys are located in Murraysville, New York, right? Well, yeah, we are. Great. I just want to get it over to you and back. That's all I'm trying to do. Well, great. Listen, as I mentioned, the purpose of my call is to schedule a brief 15-minute phone conversation sometime early next week. Look at my calendar. I got Thursday at 1. Would that work on your end? Right? Back to the purpose of the call, etc. Right? I will tell you that just following this process, just these words, you're going to set a meeting right to here 50% of the time. Right? If you're not doing it right, and we should talk. But just following the process, having a good referential value proposition, and just doing this basic shit, you're going to set a meeting, actually, I'm lying to you. 50% is too aggressive. 25% of the time, all right? You can get to 50 or higher, but 25% of the time off a live connect, you should be able to do that. What I'll also tell you is that everything that happens after this point is an objection, right? You're going to think it's a rational conversation about whether they want to meet, whether they like your product, interested, etc. But I will explain to you in a minute how everything after this is an objection, right? I'm asking you for your time. I haven't pitched you on anything. I've shared with you an example of how I work with others like you, meaning I talk to people like you all the time. You're supposed to be in this conversation. I'm asking you for something you can give me very easily, a 15-minute phone introduction, right? That's what people do. We have, professional introductions. Anything that happens after this is an objection. Let's get into that. By the way, if you got questions on the scripting, let me know. I'm trying to be pretty thorough here. We're coming up on almost an hour, about 50 minutes. So I'll kind of pick it up a little bit, but I think we're doing well. So let's talk about objections, right? Remember the 16th Street Mall analogy. As we're walking down, we're not having rational conversations, right? We are trying to get to our lunch on time, and we are trying to protect ourselves from all of the interruptions that are keeping us from that. I define an objection as a rational response to an unsolicited request. And by the way, there are a limited number of objections. In fact, I think there's only 5 or 6. I'll talk about them in a second. And we all have our go-to objections, right? And just think about when you're wandering down the street and somebody's asking for money or save the children or help the homeless. There's something you do almost every time. You either ignore them, you either say, "Oh, I'm on a phone call." You say no thanks. Some people are rude and say, "Leave me alone." But there's something that you do that's your go-to move. It's a reflex. Right? It's not a rational response. It's a reflexive response, like hitting on the knee and your knee makes a little movement there, right? That's how that works. So when we enter into the objection stage of the conversation, we have to turn off our rational brain and not enter into a conversation or try to, combat or overcome the objection with reason. They're not giving us a reasoned statement. We're not going to have a reasoned conversation back. So there's 3 steps to dealing with reflexive responses, to dealing with objections. The first thing is to agree, right? And I'll get into specifics in a minute. why would I argue with somebody when they tell me they're not interested? Oh, but if you only saw, no, that's nonsense, right? If I agree with you, I'm aligning with your interests. I'm not flagging myself as a vendor, and you're going to keep listing. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask another question, either a qualification or a clarification question. By the way, you need to have a list of these things. At this point, it is appropriate and definitely a good idea to perhaps ask a question that will help you determine, do you even want the meeting at this point? Are they the right person, etc. Be careful not to ask really deep, are you struggling with, are you really looking to, interest questions, but I'm trying to understand your environment, things like that. Part of the reason we ask a question is to distract them, right? I've agreed with you, I asked a question, hopefully by this time you forgot that you said no, and I'm go back to the purpose of my call, which is asking for a meeting. Get into that in a second. There's only 5 objections. Feel free to send me an email, say, no, you're wrong, what about this one, Townsend? But I will tell you that in my entire experience, everything falls in these 5 categories. We already have a great solution. Put that with, I'm happy with my current. I'm using another vendor, happy with current. Not interested, too busy, send me info, let's talk now. I'm not going to get into this a ton today because we're getting short on time, but I will tell you that talk right now is an objection. People argue about this with me again and again, and I will tell you 100% that the shutdown rate of let's talk now is so high, meaning we talk and then you say, nah, not interested. You got to treat it as an objection and not agree to talk now. You are at such a disadvantage in interruptive communication when you're trying to actually present your solution, talk about what you do, talk about the value proposition, ask discovery questions. I am of the belief that you absolutely 100% need to avoid the let's talk now at all costs. And one of the things you'll get, and I put it up here, I've got a sample customized objection handling worksheet that you'll get, has all this stuff in it. And if you have the cold call book, all these objections are laid out and they're all scripted, so I don't need to get into it. Send me info obviously is also an objection, and it talks about how to go through that in that guide. So I'm just going to go through one here, just because I think it'd be a good idea to see how this works. But somebody says, hey, we're working with another vendor. We're real happy. Of course you are, right? My favorite response is, well, I would hope so. If not, you'd probably be on the Google. And you'd be calling me, right? I'm agreeing with you. Now a question. Let me ask you this. How long have you been working with that vendor? Got it, okay. And you guys have about 10,000 employees, right? Okay, great. Just information gathering. By the way, the question doesn't have to have anything to do with the objection. That's a little secret, right? I can ask you a question, hey, how's the weather out there in Topeka? That's probably not a good one to ask, but you can do it that way, right? Yeah, 10,000, that's about right. In fact, we just had a little party celebrating. Oh, that's really cool. Listen, as I said, purpose of my call is, I'm not trying to pitch you. I don't want to get into a conversation here. I don't even know if my services are correct for you, but I want to grab 10, 15 minutes on our calendar, have a formal conversation, formal introduction. Can we do that next Thursday at 1 o'clock? You see how reasonable that sounds? Right? I didn't get into the objection. I didn't argue with the guy. I didn't try to make him think that what I had is way better than what they have. I agreed with them. I asked them a couple questions that were relevant, and I got back to the purpose of my call, which is, come on, give me 10, 15 minutes. Not a big deal. Not a big deal at all. No questions coming through. Oh, wait, I got one. I'm going to answer this one right now because it's really good. This one's coming in from Anthony, and he says, how do I get past the gatekeeper so I can speak to the actual prospect? Great question. I got another hour-long webinar on that I'll do, but I'll try to answer sort of quickly. The first thing is, you got to think about it not as getting past the gatekeeper, right? If you think about the gatekeeper as your enemy, you're not off to a good start. That's not going to be a good idea. One of the easiest tricks is call when the gatekeeper's not there. Auto dial, get the direct number. Another is co-opt the gatekeeper. And then sometimes you're just not going to get past the gatekeeper. Like I said, I got a whole thing on gatekeepers. I think if you check my YouTube channel, Anthony, there's actually a video on that. Gatekeepers are tough. Your first weapon is persistence. Your second weapon is politeness. The third thing is you really need to understand what kind of gatekeeper is it. Is it, receptionist, $8, $10 an hour, sitting there all day? Is it, somebody who is, a little level up from that, maybe at a law firm, who actually does coordinate with all these attorneys? Or is it that person's personal assistant? I'll tell you, if it's the second or the third, you may have to work through them. And that's why I said that's a whole nother seminar kind of thing. Okay, you guys can read this. I won't do that. Let's talk about closing the call, right? So let's assume you follow this whole process and they say, yeah, great, Thursday at 1 o'clock. Awesome. First thing you need to do is make sure you actually have an appointment, right? It's easy after all this to kind of delude yourself and think when they say, yeah, sure, call me around then. right? That's different than, yeah, that's great, right? Or yes, I can do 1 o'clock, right? You'll know if you're really being honest with yourself, did I get an appointment or not? But the easiest way to do it is to make sure that you set expectation as part of the closing call. When they've said yes, you're going to say something like, well, great, listen, I will definitely look forward to speaking with you next Thursday at 1 p.m. Here's what I'm going to do, Bob. I'm going to go ahead and send you a confirmation email after this call as soon as I get off. I'll also send you a meeting invite, an Outlook invite. You can get Outlook invites, right, Bob? Great. What's your email again? Right? And then I'll also, I typically will do a quick reminder call the night before, right? So I can set the expectations for whatever my, whatever my process is. But my best practice is I'm going to send an email, and these are all templated emails. Hey, thanks for talking. Confirmation about, an email that they'll get. Usually I send it through Salesforce or another service so I can see that they got it or opened it. I'll send them an Outlook calendar invite, and then I'll call them the night before with a reminder. And all through those, in the email and in the voice, I will make the point that, hey, I've set time aside on my calendar. If for any reason you can't make it, please let me know so that I'm not, wasting my time, et cetera, right? So that's how we like to close the call. No shows and reschedule. They're a fact of life. I did a project a couple years ago where I reached out to almost everybody in my LinkedIn network, whatever you call it. I had, at the time, it was only about 800 people. So that was a lot. I had an assistant who helped me with that. I had an 85% show rate, stated differently. I had a 15% no call, no show rate from people in my network that I knew that had accepted a meeting, that did all those things. You can't get better than 85%. It's not going to happen. You can't get frustrated about it, right? You just can't. 50% of the no-shows should be reschedulable, right? And you'll get some cancellations as well. But the idea is if you follow that process that I just shared with you in terms of setting expectations, all that kind of stuff, and I'll give you something else in a minute, 85% is about what you're shooting for. So if you're below that, you might need to take a look at the process you're using to set the meeting and remind people, etc. One of the bonuses you will get is the dealing with no-shows and cancellations. And it's a whole set of templates and email templates and stuff that you can use and just kind of basically poach. One of the other things to minimize no-shows is even how you make the call, right? When we were doing outsourcing for other companies and setting meetings, the no-show rate was absurdly high, like 40%. What we found out is the sales reps were calling at the allotted time, and they called once and never called again. This is the process. I'm not going to go through it. You can read this, and it's in one of the guides as well. But this is how you minimize no-shows. You call at the appointed time. You leave that message. You call 7 minutes later, and you call 12 minutes later. You do this, and you'll get 85% show rate, and that'll be good. Okay, expectations. Yeah, I'll work from the bottom to the top. This is not about one call closing, right? You're not going to be calling people and using this process to close a deal. At a minimum, it's going to be a 2-call close. So even if you're kind of a simplistic, transactional product, you're going to want to parse it into, the appointment set and then the closing call. But in most cases, it's going to be a little more protracted. I already told your meeting show rate about 85%. You should be able to convert more than 50% of your live conversations with the target, not with the receptionist, into a meeting. That's where you can get to. People starting out 10, 20%, that's not bad. Using this process, 50% of the live connects, meaning I'm actually talking to Bob, who's the president, I should be able to turn that into a meeting. That's pretty good. I've got guys who do 75, 80%. I've had folks who are almost at 100%, right? That's exceptional, but I'll take 50%, right? By the way, if you use some of the other techniques, email and voicemail, etc., you should be able to set a meeting with everybody you go after. Call volume. You want to assume that your live conversation rate is going to be in the 12 plus or minus % range. Meaning if you make 100 dials, you're only going to get 12 conversations. That's not a lot. If I'm making 50 calls a day, I can have a legitimate conversation with 3 people and I can set, 1 or 2 meetings. That's not bad, right? Because I can do that in a few hours. If I've got some automation and a dialer or something like Connect and Sell, even better. But you got to be realistic about how you're programming your time and how many calls you're making, etc. But in reality, you're only going to talk to 10, 12, 15% of the people that you dial. So you got to have a good process, otherwise you're burning dials for no reason. Voicemail, yeah, of course. People say, should I use it? I set a voicemail on the first call, and on the last call, right? The deal is don't be a pest, don't fill up their voicemail box, but there's no reason not to leave a quick voicemail on the first one. This is in the whole packet, but I'll go through a quick. Usually what I like to say is, hey, this is Townsend. Sorry I missed you. Trying to catch you so we can set up a 10-minute intro call sometime early next week. Listen, if you absolutely lose your mind and go crazy, you can call me on. I'll give the number. Otherwise, I'll keep trying to reach you until I catch you live over the next couple of weeks. So you probably see my number pop up on the old caller ID there. Have a great day. I try to be friendly, nice, what have you. They might have deleted it already. Doesn't matter. What about email? Absolutely, right? I've got guys who set almost 100% of their meetings via email using this prospecting process. That may sound a little weird, but the idea is this. If I tell you on the front, I'm going to keep calling you, and I dial, and you see my number, I'm not going away. If I, somewhere in the process, third or fourth attempt, drop a nice little email in there with the subject line saying, been trying to reach you, suggested times below, give you a same friendly sort of spiel, and I suggest 3 times that we can chat, I get a pretty high hit rate off of that. One of the bonuses you'll get is I've got all these sales templates already wrapped up in a little bow, and you can just cut and paste them and use them, so you'll get that. But yeah, email in the prospecting process is just absolutely a killer. All right, that's about an hour, and we're gonna do questions. So I'm seeing some questions come in, so please bring them in. But I'm going to warn you, I'm going to pitch on something here. So this is the bathroom break or whatever. It's not that big of a deal. But yeah, please send me some questions. That's all the content, the formal content. But I'm happy to stick around and do more questions, etc. TownsendWard@gmail.com. That's where you send it. So here's the sales pitch portion of the program. I'm going to run what I'm calling a little boot camp, right? A little round table, what have you, over the next 4 weeks. It's starting here in September. It's going to be once a week for about an hour and a half, and you'll have specific assignments, right? Because I gave you all this stuff in an hour, but there's really 4 things that you need to be successful. You need a solid referential value proposition. You need a call flow script that's customized for you, and you need the objections that are customized for you, and then you actually need to have this in your schedule. So I figure I can do this in a group session and do it pretty efficiently. Probably can put, maybe 100 people in there. At the most. That might be a little high. We'll see how that goes. And basically, we'll meet once a week. It'll be live, and then it'll also be recorded, and you'll have specific assignments every week related to that, and then I'll be on the other end of it helping you customize it. So this is a way you can get me to help you with the referential value proposition, the call flow script, and just kind of tune it, right? It's not as much as we were working one-on-one, but you can email me and it'll be fine. So the whole thing is to give you guys all the tools you need to set appointments flawlessly and just go and implement this whole thing rather than spending the next 6 months trying to figure it out yourself. Let's bang that out in the next 4 weeks. So the deal is this, a 4-week boot camp thingy. I'll have the link to how do you sign up for it in the follow-up email. I'm going to charge $150 when I launch this. This is the first time I'm doing this. When I launch it again, I'm going to do it after the first of the year. I'm going to charge $300, and I'll probably do some fancy internet marketing thing like $295, but I hate that shit. So anyway, it's $150 if you do it this round. And then it'll be $300 if you want to do it next year. It's a pretty good deal, right? In terms of getting some of my time and really nailing this stuff down. So look for that in your inbox. If you have any questions, please let me know. All right, fantastic. To wrap up, look for an email, right? I need to just do a quick edit on the recording and put it up on the YouTube in a hidden thing, and then it'll be out to you. All the bonuses will be in there. There's 8 of them, and then there's a link to sign up for. That's what I'm calling a master class is what I'm calling it. It wasn't a boot camp thingy. So yeah, look for that. I'm going to try to get that out in the next hour, so you guys can look at that and download the bonuses and do all that fun stuff. With that, take a little break. I'm gonna have another sip of the Batman glass water. I'm gonna get into some questions here. So Bill Elliott. Hey, thanks, Bill. The question is, if we get voicemail on the first call, should we leave a message? And the answer is yes, right? That's the voicemail that I leave here. In the bonus thingy, what you'll get is, my best. It's one of those things here. Actually, no, sorry. That's in the that's actually in the cold call playbook. All this stuff is in there. But yeah, I leave a voicemail just like this after the first call. Get voicemail, leave voicemail, and then on my last call, if I'm making 8 touches. On the last one, I'll leave what I'll call basically the close the file email. And again, that should be in that packet if it's not let me know and I'll get that to you. Hope that answered. Okay, see what else we got here. Interesting concept. Lou asks or states, a reminder call may allow an out for the prospect. True, that's a true statement. That to me means that you didn't sell the meeting appropriately. They didn't want to take it in the first place. Or they're not going to show anyway, right? So my question is, would you rather know they're not going to show because they told you, or would you rather have a half an hour slot, again, spend, minute 7, minute 12, whatever, calling and have wasted a half an hour of your day? So my view is, I'd much rather somebody say, hey, I really want to meet tomorrow. What I will then at that point say is, hey, I really appreciate you doing that. You got a lot on your plate, I'm sure. I will keep you on my list. Hopefully I'll reach back out in a month or so, and maybe at that point you can give me the 10 or 15 minutes. Thanks so much. So I don't ask them. I set the expectation I'm going to call again, and I'm kind of playing on their, I don't know if sympathy is the right word, but yeah, you make a good point. The reality is everything we do, any action has a possible negative action. The process that I'm really going through here, the intention isn't to be perfect because nothing's perfect. The intention is to minimize the probability of a negative action. So yeah, 1 out of X number of times somebody's going to use the reminder call to cancel it. Now, I'll tell you this. Often I'll do my reminder calls, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night. I'm intending to get voicemail. I never reach them live. But yeah, anything in here has a potential negative outcome. Everything in here, I will tell you, has a positive outcome far more often than the negative one, which is why we do it that way. Okay, Carrie, so glad you joined us. You mentioned setting up a campaign and testing it out. What is the number of prospects or amount of time I should work through to realistically understand if a certain campaign is working out? Great question. Great question. I would say that, because I got to think about this one. If I'm doing this by myself, right, if it's just me, I would probably give a given campaign a week, right? And that would be, a minimum of 50, ideally 100 calls a day. So I guess the answer to your question is, I think you can get good data on a campaign somewhere between 300 and 500 calls, 300 and 500 dials, right? Because you can start to get some of the statistics playing out. I'd much prefer 1,000 dials, right, which might suggest 2 weeks or even 3. But I think you can start to get good preliminary data, 300, 400, 500 dials. So hopefully that answers your question. If not, send me another email. You mentioned, okay, this is from Leland. You mentioned you called 7 minutes and 12 minutes to prevent a no-show. Can you repeat that? Yeah, I went through it quick. And actually, you will find this. That's objections. Where are we? I'll find this thing here. One of the bonuses dealing with no-shows and cancellations has this in there. Here's what I meant. If I am trying to reach somebody, if I have a scheduled appointment, if I call you at, 3 o'clock, the chances of you answering at 3 o'clock are actually about 30 or 40%. The reason is you're coming from another meeting. Think about how people live their lives. Every meeting runs late. Everybody's competing and juggling and trying to find other stuff to do or trying to avoid doing more stuff. So, the real challenge is you're not at your desk, right? If I call you at 10 o'clock, the chances that you're actually there waiting for my call are really little. Like I said, statistically, it's 30, 40% of the time. If I don't make multiple calls, I'm relying on them to call me back. Now, sometimes they do, but what I've found is if I call them once, my show rate, if you will, is about, 30, 40%. If I call twice, I can get that to 50, 60%. The third call gets me into the 70, 80+% range that I want. So I hope that makes sense. It's really not about show rates, but helping others manage their own, their own lack of time management, right? That's really what the reality is. They suck at managing their time. If I don't do something about it, I suffer from the no-show. So hopefully that helped you. All right, more. Great question from Chris. Days of week, time of day. In your experience, what days and times have worked best for cold calling? I like to cold call on days that I'm working and awake. No, just kidding. The answer is, depends who you're going after. I will tell you that going after senior executives, I have the most success early in the morning. I'm talking 6 a.m. And later at night, I'm talking 6 p.m., 7 p.m. No gatekeepers. They answer their phones, right? If I want to get a CEO, even of a large corporation, that dude or lady is sitting at their desk at 7 o'clock at night. They're there at 6 a.m. in the morning. The founder, the owner, that's when they're there, and there's nobody guarding the gate. So I like that. For most regular stuff, I like the mornings, right? I love to be on the phones at 7, bang out an hour and a half of calls, power up some more coffee, do another hour, what have you, even a half an hour. Here's an interesting thing. If prospecting is important to your job, come in a half an hour earlier, maybe 45 minutes earlier, and do a half an hour of calls every day for a week and watch what happens. I guarantee it will change your game dramatically. Simple, you don't have to change your entire world. Another half an hour of calls first thing of the day when you're fresh, you haven't even thought about it, it will change your entire game, change your entire day. I generally don't like calling later in the day. I'm tired. I need a nap. I'd rather get the hell out of the office. I will tell you that a 3 to 5 window is just kind of death for me. Usually, I don't like it. I don't find people are really that receptive. I don't even like scheduling meetings. I use that for prep. I like to get the hell out of the office. Go search for my lists, clean up my database. Figure out who I'm going to call tomorrow and get set. To me, my performance throughout the day just goes like this. So earlier in the day, days of the week, I have never seen a meaningful correlation in connecting with people days of the week. I will tell you that Tuesdays after a long weekend tend to suck. Another little fun fact, one thing that's interesting, Fridays before a long weekend or before a holiday or any day before a holiday can be the most productive cold calling ever because nobody wants to talk. Nobody wants to do any real work. They actually will answer the phone. And if my goal is not to pitch them but get a meeting, they'll give it to me. I'll call somebody and say, hey, listen, I'll be brief. I know you're probably trying to get the hell out the door for the Labor Day weekend. I actually don't even want to talk right now. My goal is, can we catch up next week on Thursday for 15 minutes? Just want to formally introduce myself. People love that stuff. Man, Christmas vacation, all of that stuff. People love it when they're leaving the office and all I want to do is get them off the phone and schedule something later and they give it to me. It's fantastic. So great question. If you have more clarification or need to know more stuff, Chris, go for it or send me an email, whatever the heck you say. Questions are slowing down. Let's see if we got any stuff. All right. I don't see anything else. I'm trying to think what else I can share. This has been a lot of stuff, about an hour and 15 minutes. A lot of stuff in here, lots to digest. I really hope, you guys will take advantage of the masterclass thing. Not a lot of money. If you're broke and need a scholarship, let me know. I'll work something out with you. If you need a payment plan, whatever, just send me an email. We'll figure that out. But I really would love for you guys to be able to have all the tools really kind of buttoned up and dialed in for yourself and just be able to nail this. To me, the ability to know you can pick up the phone, dial a number, get a person, and get them to give you 15 minutes, man, it's like, I don't know, it's like magic, right? And by the way, this applies to sales, right? Trying to get sales meeting. It applies to getting a job, right? If you're looking for a job or have ever looked for a job or ever plan to, you can do the send resume nonsense, which we all know works, really, really well. Or you call the hiring manager. I've never gotten a job, I haven't had one in a while, but I've never gotten a job by, sending a resume on the internet or sending a resume to somebody. I've got the job by cold calling the shit out of whoever is going to hire me, who's going to be my boss, and proving to them that they want me as part of their team. I always tell the funny story when I went to go work for Lucent, which I kind of considered my big break, in selling. Well, one of my big breaks. The hiring manager, who's a good buddy of mine, now he is anyway. I called him every day for 6 months, every weekday for 6 months. Didn't fill his voicemail box up. Once a week, I'd leave him a voicemail, sometimes twice a week if I had a joke or something interesting to share. Every day for 6 months. Now that job changed the direction of my career, changed my game, et cetera, et cetera. That was worth it, right? I think so. But being able to do that and have that kind of persistence, have that kind of toolkit to me is just, it's a pretty powerful thing. So I think that's about it. I don't know what else I can say today. I don't see any more questions. My email's here, so if you have more questions, you can email me later. Otherwise, you'll be getting something in your inbox here in the next hour. And more than anything, I want to thank all you guys for joining me today, and wish you luck in this, and let me know how I can help you. As I love to say in all my emails when I sign off, go sell something. Thanks so much. Have a great afternoon.